Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So I thought let's start with a deck that people might not have seen yet. Pro Tour champion Alexander Hayne got to Mythic #1 on Magic Arena with a deck this week, and he held it for quite a while on stream and for a couple days now, I think. So I don't know if people have seen the deck. I think it's worth talking about, though.
Sure. I mean, this deck, this archetype's been showing up some, but Hayne's got the mono a slightly different tuned list of mono blue aggro, which has obviously it's a lot like the fringe sort of archetype that existed in the last format that people like Gabriel Nassif played at times, but it's picked up some important new weapons, most notably Pteramander.
Yeah, so Hayne has gone down to 3 copies of Mist-Cloaked Herald to help make room for 4 copies of Pteramander. So he's got looks like 11 evasive 1-drops, like Mist-Cloaked Herald hard to block, Pteramander hard to block, Siren Storm Tamer hard to block, and then on turn 2, he has 4 Curious Obsession, a couple of Dive Downs, and 3 Spell Pierce, right? So that's the plan, right? Get any 1-drop guy down, and then if you can Curious Obsession with Dive Down or Spell Pierce backup, then cross your fingers? Is that the...
Well, I mean, that's that's part of it. But actually, it's worth pointing out, though, the Mist-Cloaked Herald going down to 3, it is going down a little, but it's also, compared to the rest of the format, it's actually going up. People in the last format were doing stuff like playing 4 Siren Storm Tamer and 4 Mist-Cloaked Herald. Nowadays, most people have cut all of the Mist-Cloaked Heralds to play Pteramander. For instance, Larry Johnson's build, just as an example. Larry Johnson's mono blue build was 4 Trickster, 4 Pteramander, 4 Siren Storm Tamer, 4 Tempest Djinn as his only creatures. So one of the things Hayne is doing different here is actually only cutting 1 Mist-Cloaked Herald for a Pteramander and getting the other 3 Pteramanders by cutting spells. By cutting, and in particular, cutting stuff like extra counterspells or blink of an eye.
Or land, right?
Or land.
Hayne's got the fat 19 island in his deck.
Yeah, just 19 islands with 4 ops, though, which is definitely something, and then 3 copies of Charter Course. But a part of it is you can also sometimes just go turn 1 Mist-Cloaked Herald, turn 2 Curious Obsession, to help fix your mana.
So what do you think about this cutting Charter Course, right? So Hayne's got 3. You mentioned Larry Johnson's build, which was 12th place at last weekend's Classic. He only has 1 Charter Course. To me, if you look at the evolution of the Blue-Red Drake's deck, one of the big gets there, for playing Pteramander, and these are archetypes that have, at least 8 to 11 1-drop guys, is to go first turn guy, get in there, maybe it trades, maybe it connects, but then just draw some cards with Charter Course. What do you think about going down on those cards?
Well, I think it's great that Hayne's going up. I think a lot of people only were playing 0 or 1 Charter Course in these mono blue decks, and that just seems crazy to me. Now that you have access to Pteramander, to me the real question is 3 or 4. I personally lean 4, but I don't think it's crazy to consider playing only 3 when drawing the second one is less good, and then you're going to be opening with Curious Obsession some amount of the time as well. I personally would play 4 Charter Course, but I like 3 a lot better than 1.
Yeah. Nobody's wavering on Tempest Djinn, though, right?
Of course. No. That guy. That's the whole point. That's the point. Something else I think is interesting about Hayne's build compared to others. So Hayne's got 3 Spell Pierce, 2 Dive Down, an Essence Capture, and 4 Wizard's Retort. So with 10 counterspells total, assuming that you count the Dive Downs, 10 counterspells total, if you compare that to something like Larry Johnson, who has 3 Dive Downs and 2 Spell Pierce, a Quench instead of that, a Quench and an extra Essence Capture, you see part of where Hayne got room for the extra 1-drops. He's just playing a little bit less permission. He's also not playing Entrancing Melody. And I'm curious your thoughts on 0 main deck Entrancing Melody.
I can live with 0 main deck Entrancing Melody. I do think
he's got 2 on the board.
I do think you want some access to Entrancing Melody, in particular because Mono Red is an atrocious matchup for this deck. Like, I know Mono Red has lost some stock in the Allegiance kind of new set coming in and new options, so it's not nearly, I think, as good as it was in the last format, but it's still very good against this archetype. Goblin Chainwhirler is great against all these 1 toughness creatures, and Shock is great against almost every creature in this deck. But Mono Red has a lot of problems with Entrancing Melody, so even if you don't have it main deck, I can live with that as long as you have some access to the sideboard, because I do think you really want it in that matchup, because also their creatures are cheap enough that you can get a good melody in.
Okay, yeah, I can see it. That's interesting.
Like you're never going to melody, like, I don't know. I was going to say Carnage Tyrant, but you're really never going to melody Carnage Tyrant. Like, the Sextus isn't equipped to get a big guy. Like, the point of that melody.
Well, I thought the big guy you get is the Hydroid Krasis.
You could get that very well, yeah. That's not an expensive casting cost because the X is going to go to 0, right?
Yeah. Yep, it only takes 4 mana to steal that one. I think a big part of Haynes' plan is sideboarding in Surgemare, right? I mean, Surgemare is kind of a weird card, but I mean, sometimes you just want to block.
Well, I was actually playing some kind of test games with Adrian Sullivan at Grand Prix, New Jersey a couple weeks ago, and he had Surgemare in the main deck. I got to tell you, that card is kind of annoying to play against. It has gigantic toughness, so like you said, blocking is kind of what it's really good at, but the ability to do the +2 -2 does give it some capability to beat up on the guys that it's blocking or get in there for damage sometimes.
Sure. So I mean, this does look like a pretty good build of this style, like a disciplined and extra super duper low to the ground. Haynes been crushing it the last few days. It'll be interesting to see how long he can hold on to that top spot. What do you think of the use of 0 Diamond Mare? Most mono blue decks always play some amount of Diamond Mares.
Yeah, I think Diamond Mare is a card that if I played mono blue, I would really, really want to have access to some. I might want to have access to 4. That is a card that can legitimately punish mono red. Diamond Mare's got a solid 3 toughness. That 1/3 stat is good for fighting, for example, Pyromancers or holding back 1/1 hasty pirates. And just any of the extra life is potentially valuable. I think that if you grind your way to Mythic number 1 with this archetype, a fair amount of it is, I don't know, metagame call. You think people at that tier are not playing as much red, maybe? I don't know, because I do think this deck is a little ill-equipped for mono red, but I do think also that Surgemare and Entrancing Melody are both solid ins.
Where are you boarding Fairy Duelist in against?
I'm actually cheating and looking at Haynes' sideboard guides.
Nice. Good man, Alexander Haynes.
He posted them. Let's see. A mono blue, you bring in the Fairy Duelist. White wheat.
Oh, the mirror
Duelist. Those look like the two main spots to bring in Fairy Duelist.
Sure. Like your opponent's attacking with a Siren Storm Tamer, and then you just boom, surprise, Fairy Duelist.
I mean, the Fairy Duelist is he's a duelist. He's good at dueling. He's a fairy. He's very tricky that way.
So the as good as this mono blue deck might be, it was another weekend with an excellent showing from Hydroid Krasis. It was tempered a little bit compared to last week, but Hydroid Krasis definitely some great finishes, including first place in Sultai in the Classic and second place in the Team Open with Sultai again. So first of all, one thing that jumps out at me about all these different takes on Sultai is that the basically universal adoption of multiple main deck hostage takers. Last week, the majority of the Sultai decks were not actually playing Hostage Taker. It was kind of just, it appeared in some of them, but probably not even half. This week, however, it looks like everybody's got 2 Hostage Takers. And in particular, Hostage Taker is very exciting for when you, if you're going to just hostage take somebody else's Hydroid Krasis, right?
Oh, yeah. I think that is really kind of the hyper exciting payoff, right? Doesn't matter how big their Krasis is. They might be stuck and have a small Krasis, right? Or they might have the biggest Krasis. Hostage Taker can take that Krasis off the battlefield. And if you have a pretty good belief that you're not going to get your Hostage Taker killed in the next turn or so, it's not like these decks have dive down or anything, but, they might just not have a removal spell. You can now cast the Hydroid Krasis and get a huge benefit out of it.
Well, and what's more is even if your opponent Assassin's Trophies your Hostage Taker or something, right? Even if they kill it, they get back a 0/0 Krasis.
Oh yeah, that's also awesome. Yeah, so they don't
right. So
they don't get anything
the ceiling
back.
Is so good for you, and the floor is so not that bad. Even if things go south, you still killed it.
When you put it like that, I'm actually a little disappointed that there are only 2 hostage takers in these decks, and not even any in most of these sideboards, right?
Yeah, I could see playing 4. Hostage taker just seems amazing in the format right now.
Yeah, I just want to raise another kind of a blue and black card that is
Thief of Sanity.
Yeah, I mean Alex Hahn's deck, which is the one that won the Classic. I think he might be a Thief of Sanity shy. That first turn...
Definitely, I think so too.
First turn Llanowar Elves into second turn Thief of Sanity is legitimately scary for some matchups, right? Any removal poor deck, I don't know, Sultai Mirror, for example, relatively removal poor, and not there's a lot of mono green, but this thing will tear up a lot of control decks, especially when you're pairing it with Duress. And it's just, if it's on the table on turn 2, if you're not a shock deck, you're not Drakes, you're not mono red, you might just get murdered. And it's unbelievable. It's the entire payoff of the mono blue deck in one card.
Well, it's one of the things I like about Esper so much is I think Esper makes fantastic use. I would sideboard 4 Thief of Sanity in Esper.
I mean, Esper...
And Esper doesn't even have access to the Unreal Llanowar Elf into Thief of Sanity opening.
Yeah, but Esper gets different payoffs. I could see playing 4 Thief of Sanity main deck in Esper if you were, for example, playing Hero of Precinct 1, right?
Oh, for sure. I think Thief of Sanity is, and this is a card you've been beating the drum for, but I think Thief of Sanity's time to shine is now.
Yeah, this card is... I really think that the Llanowar Elves into Thief of Sanity draw is going to be one of the defining elements of the go forward in this part of this part of the year's standard. I think that if you look at the kind of the deck outlooks, you have some players on mono red who are cutting Goblin Chain Whirler in favor of Risk Factor main deck, just as an example, right? Some people are doing that. I think they're maniacs, right? I wouldn't do that. But the fact that people are doing that is kind of a signal that Llanowar Elves is going to get a little more life in him than he's had in some previous months. He's been good. He performed in Golgari. It's not like it was, last summer when it was just mono Chain Whirler decks holding down Llanowar Elves, but I really think red is at a nadir of its popularity right now, or it's popular, but it's not doing well. Is maybe 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other, and that makes Llanowar Elves better, and it makes shockable creatures like Thief of Sanity a lot better, also.
Yep. So there was. There's a lot of Crushing Canopies in the Sultai decks. There was actually kind of a new twist on the Crushing Canopy experience that caught my eye out of the sideboard of Alion Trazi's Simic Nexus of Fate deck. So this is another Hydroid Krasis deck. And that's actually one of the twists here is that Antrazi has taken the sort of Turbo Time Walk Simic deck. Wilderness Reclamation, Blink of an Eye, Chemist's Insight, Growth Spiral, Nexus of Fate, Root Snare, Precognitive Perception, Search for Ascanta, this whole thing. But then he's playing a bunch of Hydroid Krasis, And his twist is that he's playing 4 main deck Frilled Mystics.
So, were you the one who said that the amazing thing about Allegiane is he always makes the same deck, but with different cards and in different colors?
Yeah. No, I guess he
really does. I mean, this is a very Allegiane deck, right? So, so I think that the small creature package, kind of blue-green strategy is. I mean, that's one that you were advocating a couple weeks ago. Like, what if we just saw, just saw 4 Frilled Mystics and 4, Elf Crabs? But I think Hydroid Krasis is a good guy to have in that slot also. This seems very, very not like in a negative way. Like, it's really obvious though. Like, this is a good way to play a creature package for this kind of a deck.
The thing that's interesting, though, is that he's using, like, how he made room for the Frilled Mystic is very non-traditional. Instead of playing any of the 3-mana enchantments that, like, let one of his lands tap for 2, and instead of playing Teferi, he's got Hydroid Krasis and Frilled Mystic. Now, Teferi versus Hydroid Krasis, no big surprise. You need a victory condition, right? But Frilled Mystic over any of those land auras, that's kind of not necessarily the move you think of first.
I think it's okay. I was in a spot where I was playing a match last night, and I came very close to just conceding, but I just rando threw a Frilled Mystic down, and it just was enough. It was like a bad mana accelerator, right? I didn't counter a spell. I just threw it down in combat. But it bought me a turn. The same as, one of these double lands might. And I had a Wilderness Reclamation, and he didn't kill me. 2 life isn't 0 life. And, stuff started happening because of that Wilderness Reclamation. So I do think that as a time buying tool, Frilled Mystic is really, really significant here. Also, not for nothing, but kind of that growth spiral into 4 sequence, you're not always going to have your Wilderness Reclamation, right? Frilled Mystic is a great thing to do with 4 mana if you're not going to have your Wilderness Reclamation, right?
Or if you do.
Well, if you do, I don't know. That's just cheating. Anybody who has not cast a growth spiral into a Wilderness Reclamation, the first time you do that, you're like, what do I do now? I can do anything. I literally get all of my land back this turn, and then next turn you could just cast a Precognitive Perception on your main phase. Okay, provided you hit your land drop, you could just cast it, and then you get all your mana back again. It's crazy.
Yeah. So actually, speaking of crazy, Sagittar's Valley, dude. 3 copies of Sagittar's Valley, which is the new Crushing Canopy that we were speaking of. It's 2 and a green, instant, destroy target creature with flying. Sagittar's Valley deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent's control.
So why would you want to play this instead of Crushing Canopy, which has that other mode?
Yeah, like, obviously, if you want to kill enchantments, Crushing Canopy that's your card. But, like, if you're at a space of being like, well, I don't really care about any of the enchantments people are playing, I just never end up boarding it in against people with enchantments often enough, or the ones that do, that's not even what I want to kill. And I think here the big thing is against white and blue. So the blue decks, the mono blue decks like Haynes that we were just speaking of, play Siren Storm Tamer, and they have both the Siren Storm Tamer and the Pteramander. And if you ever kill a Jhin with Sagittar's Valley while also sweeping their dorky 1/1 that has the Curious Obsession, that's just like game winning, right?
Well, here's the
possibly turning the table if they don't have a counterspell.
Yeah, here's the thing: if you could have like a bunch of like Siren Storm Tamers or Pteramanders in play, and then just like tap out for Tempest Jhin anyway. Because you're playing against blue-green, and like you're playing against blue-green, but like, what are you really gonna do, right? I'm casting Tempest Jhin here. Sagittar's Volley is a pretty good answer to what are you even gonna do there, right? Because also Tempest Jhin is like that's mono blues, that's their equivalent of an ace. Like that's their good card, and right. So if you can get it with at instant speed with kind of a ratty sideboard card and still be able to get some potential card advantage. It's not just that you got a 2-for-1 or even that you got, an even mana 3 mana for 3 mana, taking out their good card. But you got them in maybe a surprising spot because most people don't play Sagittarius Folly yet. Maybe it will become popular. I don't know.
I like it. It's also got applications against these white decks. So there's all this stuff like, the Healing Hawk type of stuff and all the different 1/1s from Afterlife. If somebody's Tithe Taker, although I don't know how it's ever dying against blue-green except for like trading with like a Frilled Mystic. But like the ability to hit some of those 1/1 flyers is also something. But I definitely think mono blue is the primary spot for it.
Also, I think mono blue is probably a really difficult matchup for this deck. That's the other thing. Like just lining them up on paper, this deck requires its stuff to resolve, right? And a lot of the stuff it requires to resolve are in the 4, 5, and 7 mana range. And mono blue is exceptionally good at not letting 4s resolve, right? Like you might not be able to stop, a long game acceleration plan, but I can stop your 4 from landing, and that might mean that I can stop your 5 from landing, and you might be dead already, right? That's the thing, because they have so much tempo.
There was another Hydroid Krasis Nexus of Fate deck. Oh yeah, please go ahead.
Before we go there,
yeah,
I'm going to call out Ali Antrazi is a little bit old school on this one for Root Snare. I mean, it's almost a statement of resistance to bring the fogs back, I think, in the Taking Turns decks. Like, people have been so like, oh, no, I'm going to play like one Root Snare. I don't need fogs anymore, right? Like, or they're playing other colors, or they're playing gates, or they're playing white removal.
Well, it's different. Like, I think that if you play blue-green, you got to defend yourself somehow.
Yeah.
Like, if you play Nexus of Gates, yeah, you don't need fogs. You have Gates ablaze. You have 3 mana Damnation.
Yeah. I was trying to play a similar deck like I was saying, but I was just playing the Elf Crab in that slot. I think Root Snare might be better. But the Elf Crab is great. It is great. You long-balled that one so well. He is fantastic with Wilderness Reclamation.
Yeah, I think people are really sleeping on that guy. We will see.
Okay.
There's a lot. It sounds like you're on it, but I'm telling you, I think that is one to be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I'm messing around with a bunch of decks. Mostly have some number of mountains in them, but I can appreciate the beautiful synergies of this strategy for sure.
So Drake Sasser's Nexus of Gates deck is, I think, a much better direction for the Guildgate decks to go compared to like last week when most people were just overloaded on the creatures. They had all the different Guildgate related creatures like Archway Angels and Gatebreaker Rams and the Colossus.
Well, he's got those in his sideboard at least, right?
Well, yeah, except fortunately he doesn't have the Colossus. He's got Carnage Tyrant instead. But the thing I like is main deck just playing like a Time Walk deck. Instead of having like Gatebreaker Rams and Archway Angels main deck, he's got Hydroid Krasis and Nexus of Fate. And then he just plays like a Wilderness Reclamation Nexus of Fate deck with Expansion Explosion and the big thing being Gates Ablaze. And he's not even really 5 colors. He's really just a teamer deck, right? Except that he splashes white off of Guildgates because he needs a ton of Guildgates anyway, and that opens up Archway Angel out of the sideboard, particularly with Circuitous Route in order to help enable it.
Yeah, what do you think about the 3 Wilderness Reclamations in this deck, especially given the fact that he's got Growth Spiral? Like, wouldn't you be fine like cutting any of an Expansion, a Chemist's Insight, or I guess those?
I'm not cutting Expansion Explosion.
He's got him in 2, so like I don't know, an Insight.
I could cut a Chemist's Insight though.
Yeah, I'm not cutting Circuitous Route.
I could cut a Hydroid Krasis. Honestly,
I could cut a Lava Coil. Honestly.
Yeah.
See, but look at me. I'm exactly the same as what I was criticizing. I'm cutting the Lava Coil. Where a second ago I was like, oh yeah, Eliontrazi with his fogs. So that's just I played against a Wilderness Reclamation deck with Mono Red at F&M last week, and man, was that an easy matchup. So I guess it's super easy when you cut all the Lava Coils / fogs, right? Well, we're gonna do something really powerful if you give us 7 uninterrupted turns.
I do like the Archway Angels in the sideboard, by the way, and the Gatebreaker Ram. The Gatebreaker Ram is obviously just so silky smooth with Gates Ablaze. The fact that it always just grows and is bigger.
That is such
bigger
an
so that it
elegant
lives.
design. It really is. Right? Like,
Well, I don't know if I would describe Gatebreaker Ram as an elegant design. It says as long as you control 2 or more gates, Gatebreaker Ram has vigilance and trample.
what I mean is
that part I'm not sold as being elegant.
What I mean is the synergy between Gatebreaker Ram and Gates Ablaze. It's a beautiful little synergy.
Yes, that's smooth.
I think that Gatebreaker Ram would be approximately equally as popular as it is right now if you just cut the line as long as you control 2 or more gates. Gatebreaker Ram has vigilance to trample. I think it might be equally as popular.
I don't know. No, I don't know. I think the vigilance is an important part of this equation. I like the vigilance on it. It's weird to, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Design sensibilities are weird, but one of the abilities is counting 2 and the other one scaling up. But anyway, the direction that Drake has gone with Nexus of Gates here, I'm into it. Like, I mean, it's tough because really, I hate it. It's boring. But what about these Esper control decks? Like, I want to be convinced to play. I want to play a Wilderness Reclamation deck and not just a boring Esper deck. But Esper seems pretty good still.
So here's the thing. One of the things that I think is exciting about this standard / Wilderness Reclamation is there are, I don't even know, 5 different distinct Wilderness Reclamation decks that you can play. That people have already played and placed with. Like, not.
Oh yeah.
There's probably more that you could play, right? Like,
yeah, I don't think we're done yet.
More than one kind of Gates deck. There's the white splashing version, the Bant version, right? There's the blue-green kind of Simic taking turns deck that Ali Antrazi played. There's got to be more, right? So,
no, there's already more. There was another big finish from somebody playing the Todd Anderson style of Teamer, just turbo Reclamation with Primal Amulet.
Oh yeah, the Primal Amulet decks, right? It's like kind of the redundancy on 4 type decks. So yeah,
and then I also, people aren't doing it yet, but they're so close. I think some of these Bant Flash decks, it's a natural addition. But they don't have to change any other cards in their deck; they're already just set up for it.
Well, yeah. So you can get the things that kind of scratch your itches. You can get power. You can get permission. You don't have to go boring. You could. I do think boring is probably pretty good against those decks, though.
So one of the reasons the Esper, boring or not, one of the reasons Esper has really managed to keep up despite the fact that it was popular and targeted, there was an important evolution this week, super duper important. And we see Edgar Magalhães, his list in the top 4 of the Team Open featured 4 copies of Thought Erasure. And likewise, Abraham Stein over in the Classic, 4 copies of Thought Erasure. I think all these Esper decks playing 4 copies of Thought Erasure. It's important to unpack there. Thought Erasure, there's some stuff to unpack there. First, Thought Erasure is like one of the best answers in the format to Hydroid Krasis. You know, like the ability to deny them the win cast trigger is really important. You know, like being able to, like a counterspell wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, it's a dude, not a spell. So, you know, the traditional route of duressing you after sideboard doesn't work specifically against Hydroid Krasis.
Right. And then when you're playing against all these Nexus of Fate Wilderness Reclamation decks, they've got a lot of different moving pieces, right? And if you pick them apart, it's actually, they can be somewhat vulnerable to that. And they're hard decks to beat just because of how powerful of an endgame they have. But when you can Thought Erasure them and you have counterspells, it's actually going to be really difficult for them to power through that.
Yeah, I think, like, especially the aggro plan, if you can get like a guy down with the Esper deck after sideboarding and then just kind of keep them on the back foot with Thought Erasure and then even light permission, right? An absorb here or there, or a negate.
Well, that Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you're just gonna. They have so few key cards, right? Like, you don't have to. I mean, maybe you should counter their precognitive perception. I don't know. It depends on how the game is going. But like, if you can contain their wilderness reclamation, for example, maybe you can let them resolve their circuitous route. I don't know. If you're just getting them with with a Thief of Sanity, maybe you could just let them have their little explosive vegetation things. Not a big deal.
That's a big part of why Thought Erasure is so good is you're already going to sideboard for Thief of Sanity. So like being able to go Thought Erasure into Thief of Sanity is just like boom, boom. That is a great 1-2 punch.
Looking at Edgar's sideboard and even more looking at Abraham's sideboard, which includes Basilica Bellhaunt, don't you want to complete the play? Like how do these decks not sideboard Hero of Precinct 1? I mean, like,
I don't know. They just don't have that many gold cards.
But they
do.
Thief of Sanity, Hostage Taker, Thought Erasure. I mean,
Chaos Wrath
is not a. I would cash in some life. Trigger 1/1. All right, gain 2. But yeah, maybe there's not enough gold cards. Mortify, Absorb. There's a good number of gold cards. Teferi himself.
I love Basilica Bellhaunt and Hostage Taker out of Abraham Stein's sideboard. I am all about it. Right. Let me just Hostage Taker and Basilica Bellhaunt people.
I mean, this is like, it's not a full-on transformation because this is still like a power deck, not like a tap-out creature deck. But I love that against a...
Well, it's a tap-out creature deck after boarding.
Yeah, like...
To some degree, right?
I mean, you can really just play, get my Thief of Sanity. Both of these guys played 4 copies of Thief of Sanity, by the way, which I think is kind of one of the things you were telegraphing earlier. But you get that thing down, you can easily keep a Reclamation type deck or one of these like Teamer Turbo decks or whatever on the back foot for long enough to win the game, right? Like first of all, you could just win potentially with Thief of Sanity. 10 hits from him will win the game, and you're constantly going to be getting fuel because that's what's going on here. Yeah,
Basilica Bellhaunt is definitely super dope, and it can be a little challenging, the tension in your mana base of like Island is just not that good with all these Basilica Bellhaunts and Chaos Wraths. But I think that at the end of the day, you just get access to like the whole Shockland, Checkland thing is so like there's so much there. That you end up being able to work it out often enough. The Esper decks were not the only control decks showing up, though. Even though Esper was still the most popular among the control decks, there was actually one Jeskai deck that put up a top 16 finish over in the classic. Patrick Hartzell's Jeskai control deck, which was really, it's a pretty old school. It's just 4 Niv-Mizzet with some Teferis and then treasure maps and so on. Deafening Clarion, that whole thing. The innovations here were Absorb instead of Sinister Sabotage or Ionize. A better mana base thanks to Hallowed Fountain, and then Precognitive Perception replacing Chemist's Insight, which I absolutely love. I think Precognitive Perception, I like it better than Chemist's Insight, and I think this is a great deck for it.
Well, a deck with Treasure Map actually really appreciates that because
totally,
you're so rich, right, on card drawing, and you don't have to commit your mid-game mana as much while you're still able to either get card selection or actual extra cards.
And then even though it's not a new card, it's definitely a new way to do it. 3 copies of Negate. Main deck.
Yeah, I kind of don't like the 3 copies of Negate. I think I'd rather have Dive Down.
I don't know.
Or at least Spell Pierce, no?
No, because other people are just going to go Nexus of Fate or Wilderness Reclamation, and you're going to look at your Dive Down.
Yeah, but the thing is, this is a Niv-Mizzet deck. It has 4 Niv-Mizzet and only 3 Teferi.
Dude, right? You can still Niv-Mizzet. Just Niv-Mizzet when you have 8 mana.
Like a mage who's in this direction, they love Niv-Mizzet. They love the dragon, All right,
yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, I do know. Oh, yeah, I do know.
I love Niv-Mizzet. I'm slamming Drakes, and I haven't put Pteramander in because I don't want to cut Niv-Mizzet for my main deck. I know that I know it's terrible. Like every time I look at my opening hand and I see like a Niv-Mizzet and a Chart of Course, I'm like, I could have drawn 2 there. I could have. I'm not gonna. But later, gonna breathe some fire.
Dude, you could breathe fire sooner if you want to Sarkin Fireblood out your Niv-Mizzet. That's a 3/4.
Oh, yes. Sarkin Fireblood. How is this guy not more widely played? There's such good dragons in Standard now, right? Like, there are other good dragons.
Yeah, but I mean, there are. But once you're playing Niv-Mizzet, Niv-Mizzet's really demanding. And Niv-Mizzet really tries to get a monopoly on your attention. There was a little bit of an update to Azorius. A couple people did well with Azorius. Jacob Hagen, first place, obviously, in the Open, and Joe Fortini, second place in the Classic. So while Sultai got first, second one way, Azorius Aggro got first, second the other. And this is that basically mono-white deck, but it's like the Boros decks from the previous format, but it's basically mono-white, but using Glacial Fortress and Hallowed Fountain to support Deputy of Detention main deck, and then a light smattering of Permission in the board.
Yeah, so I like Joe Fortini's deck so much more than Jacob Hagen's deck, even though they're very similar. And the reason is 4 copies of Deputy of Detention versus 2 copies of Deputy of Detention. Because I almost feel like Jacob Hagen's deck, like, he's got like 3 Adanto Vanguards and 2 Deputy of Detention. I almost feel like, why bother? What do you think about that? Like,
why bother with what? What do you mean?
With the blue. I mean, like,
well, why bother with the blue with the 2 Deputy of Detentions?
Yeah.
Because you need the 2 Disdainful Strokes, the 2 Negates, and the 2 Spell Pierces. Otherwise, you just die to Kaya's Wrath.
I mean, you also have a lot of other problems, right? Like the Taking Turns deck is can probably go kind of unopposed against you.
Right. Yeah, I think you need the Permission. I would play 4 Deputy of Detentions.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, but I'm just saying that you have to. Yeah, but I'm just saying that. Don't, if you're at 2, don't. It's not 0 the direction to go. You still need the blue because you still need to cast the counter spells. I think anyway.
But I feel like, I'm just saying, if I'm making the investment, I think Deputy of Detention is a huge payoff. Like, people are taking multiple copies of cards with it.
That's another great one to hit Hydra Krasis.
I did a lazy pass, and I got all my treasures taken by a Deputy of Detention earlier this week. That will not happen again. Could have just sacrificed the treasure in question, right?
Oh, no.
All the treasures.
Oh,
I had many treasures.
Oh, no.
You know, I like a treasure map.
Okay, yeah.
That was like him drawing 6 cards.
Well, now you know.
Yeah, oh yeah. Not going to make that mistake again.
There's a different deck that could have been playing Deputy of Detention, but kind of moved away from it. Matt Tumovich's Bant Tokens deck. So the Bant Tokens decks we saw last week were playing Hero of Precinct 1, one of the most hyped cards from the set. Matt Tumovich has actually gone a very different direction. He's completely given up the Hero of Precinct 1 aspect in order to be able to play 4 Llanowar Elves, 4 Incubation Druids, 4 History of Benalia, 4 Conclave Tribunal, some Baffling Ends, some Majani Adversary of Tyrants. So he's got like a lot less multi-faction, multicolor sort of action, with the only real blue at this point, just the lightest splash. The only blue cards in the main deck are the Hydroid Krasis he's held on to give him an endgame.
Yeah, it's a big stretch, but also a pretty big payoff. One of the things that I found to be really interesting in this deck and there's similar implementations with different cards in other decks. Is the Incubation Druid? You can power it up, for example, with a Johnny Adversary of Tyrants. Like you can put +1/+1 counter on it, and then all of a sudden it goes Lotus.
Great
right?
point.
Like you don't have to spend 5 mana adapting. You could just have like an Ajani in play, and then be like, all right, I'm going to power this guy up. Now all of a sudden I have like really, really powerful engine.
Yeah, and the Incubation Druid being powered up is actually really important for this deck because that's one of the key ways to get blue mana for your Hydroid Krasis. Obviously you can get the blue mana from the Druid anyway, but if you can get this guy powered up, not only is he the blue mana you need for the Krasis, he's 3 mana so that when you untap next turn, you're already at 8, and you can just Krasis for 6. And then you're doing big things.
Yeah, I think that's like a really substantial payoff. And I, in fact, think that we might see kind of a trend in Standard to just cheat +1/+1 counters onto this creature and possibly the Elf Crab Buddy, just because their triggers are so good, and you can just, if you can get them at a discount, then you might be able to do something real surprising. Like I was imagining different ways that you could maybe get them to explore. Like if you had a Path to Discovery already in play and you cast an Incubation Druid, that might be a freebie that has a lot of synergy with other stuff. And like that's for example an insane amount of synergy with March of the Multitudes, where you would get a ton of Path of Discovery, right? You're like, if you go Path, Incubation Druid, get a trigger, all right, you're gonna have Lotus next turn if this guy doesn't die. Now you get 2 more tokens than you would have otherwise. But I think like people are gonna find ways to get +1/+1 counters on this creature that are not adapting it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. People so far the stuff using Hidana's Climb has really fallen flat, but maybe there's going to be different ways. Ajani is certainly a good start. Here's a card that I was not expecting to see in the top 16 of the Open. Andrew Hung's mono blue deck. Obviously we discussed mono blue earlier. He's got a little twist on the archetype. First of all, he's not playing Pteramander at all because he's actually just a lot creature heavy. Instead of Pteramanders, he's got Workhite Marauder and Sphinx of Foresight.
Wow, Sphinx of Foresight.
I thought you'd be interested in this one.
Yeah, so this is actually another one that Adrian was playing when I got a chance to play with him in real life a couple weeks ago. He said he thought it was fantastic. So Sphinx of Foresight does a couple of things in this deck, right? So obviously it has that first text, which is, you may reveal this card from your opening hand if you do Scry 3 at the beginning of your first upkeep. So that helps you a lot in a deck that has only 19 lands, right? So
extremely.
It's kind of weird because you're playing a 4-drop in a deck with only 19 lands now, but it will help dig you to lands early, which can, a 19-land deck is more likely to commit in kind of an unwanted mulligan, all other things held equal, than a deck with a more conventional amount of land. But it becomes less so when you're adding the Sphinx. The tension here is weird, though, right? Because that scrying ability is very, very useful, but it come the mid-game, now, I think you might have difficulty casting your 4/4. But if you can get it off...
I don't know, man. When I play these mono blue decks, I always go straight to 4. I guess I'm playing 4 Charter Course, and Andrew's only got 1, but when you have Opt and Charter Course and Curious Obsession...
You think you're just going to get there?
Yeah, I get there a lot. I don't know. To me, it's crazy how frequently I just seem to hit 4 on 4 or 4 on 5.
So the thing is, once you have the mana to cast the Sphinx of Foresight, though, it's not as good as Tempest Djinn on the table, right? Obviously, it costs more mana than Tempest Djinn, and then it is long run smaller than Tempest Djinn, but it's like more Tempest Djinns. Like, the Tempest Djinn is one of the most useful cards in this deck for a lot of matchups. Like, it has 4 toughness, so it's not easy to kill with like a lightning strike. It contains a Goblin Chain Whirler. It beats up most Explore guys. So just having another 4 toughness flyer is really useful. just in terms of its body.
Sure. Another card that you were talking about a bunch that put up its first, big finish, 10th place, Dylan Ahern, playing the Todd Anderson sort of Primal Amulet style of Wilderness Reclamation that we were alluding to earlier. Not only does he have 4 Expansion Explosion as payoffs, he's got one copy of Electrodominance.
Yeah, this deck rather has two of the really good red cards, I think, from the new set, Electrodominance and Cinder Vines. I have been remarkably impressed by Cinder Vines in Standard.
Oh yeah, I love Cinder Vines right now.
I mean,
I'm with you.
If you have Cinder Vines in play against Dylan, for example, he is in a lot of trouble. It's pretty difficult for him to remove it unless he has sided in his own Cinder Vines. And it's just going to kill him, right?
It does a serious amount of damage.
Yeah, and then the other thing is...
I like Cinder Vines. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Like, his big play is to cast a Wilderness Reclamation or a Primal Amulet, right? You have oh, do I care about that? You probably care. If you do, you literally just have, a sunk, disenchant deal 2 to you. It's just sitting there. They take a ton of damage... And you just got it there. A Destructive Revelry, just waiting. And if you draw multiple copies of Cinder Vines, oh my gosh, it is in the matchups that it's good. It is so matchup warping.
Hold on, I want to take a step back a second. You're talking about in the matchups it's good. Let's walk through how Cinder Vines lines up against these different decks. Right. So if you play against a deck like this, Cinder Vines is an MVP. Right?
Outstanding.
Right. So what if you were to play against the Nexus of Fate decks? Still outstanding. Right? What if you play against Esper Control with the only enchantments in their deck are 2 Search for Escantas or something?
Yeah, I think it would have to depend on build, but I think
it would be great. Every one of their spells is doing a damage to them.
So I have played my deck that has Cinder Vines in Standard against an Esper deck, but only against the Esper tap out version. I don't think I had Cinder Vines in against them. Obviously, that's a creature heavy deck. But you think it's great also against Esper Control? I hadn't thought about it yet.
I'm wondering if we can just play Cinder Vines in our main deck. Maybe it's too crazy because of Sultai.
Yeah, I tried it. I did not like it in the main deck, but I thought it was an unbelievable sideboard card. It was very inconsistent in the main deck. Also it's awkward to play sometimes, right? You actually just the reason that I think that it's good is because you can play it and then it's all right to play it and you're kind of pants down for a second. Your opponent's not going to get you because you took a turn off to cast Cinder Vines. In fact, you're getting them.
A turn? It only costs 2.
Well, I'm thinking about playing it as soon as I try it. But yeah, it depends what deck you're in. You could just play it on turn 4 with blue open if you're Teamer, for example. But I think this card is unbelievably great in sideboards. I think that decks that can cast it.
Of course. I think it's amazing in sideboards, but I'm serious. What about just splashing it in mono red in your main deck? Okay, so let's say you're playing against mono red. So the mono red decks came back with a vengeance this week, partly because they're so good against those mono blue decks. But partly, the world seems to have rediscovered that you're allowed to play with Experimental Frenzy. So Alex Cans has just such a clean list. His 5th place list from the Classic. 4 Firebrand, 4 Lava Runner, 4 Pyromancer, 4 Steamkin, 4 Chain Whirler. So first 20 creatures, 20 mountains. And then 4 Shock, 4 Lightning Strike, 4 Light Up the Stage, 4 Skewer the Critics, 4 Experimental Frenzy. And thank God, no Risk Factors main deck. If you're playing against Mono Red with Cinder Vines, obviously it's not great in general, right? But the fact that it hits Experimental Frenzy and the sideboard treasure maps, That's something, man.
Well, yeah, if you're playing Mono Red Mirror, for example, they're bringing in Treasure Map against you in all likelihood. But this deck, this version that Alex Cans played, is a third spells. It's just as spell heavy as it is creature heavy, so it's going to get some. It's going to get some money, I think.
Oh yeah, the damage from him having to like if you play it against him, he's going to take some damage from the spells. And it's not like he wants to shock you if you put 2 Cinder Vines down. And his hand is just Shock, Lightning Strike, and, skewer the critics. I mean, Kirby Thompson actually finished 6th place with a nearly identical list. The only difference here is that instead of the Fanatical Firebrands, he's got Wizard's Lightning. And he also has 1 extra mountain to support 1 less Experimental Frenzy.
Yeah, so I've been playing a very similar mono red deck to these two. 21 lands like Kirby. But I played no Skewer the Critics. I did play 4 Wizard's Lightning and kept the Firebrands, but obviously these decks are very close to one another. What I think is really important that you highlighted, is that Experimental Frenzy, it belongs in the standard mono red deck / again. I don't know. It did lose little favor, but the reason is a little non-intuitive. I think people were like, I can cut Experimental Frenzy, or I can cut at least some Experimental Frenzies, because Light Up the Stage is now my faster card drawing thing. But the synergy between Light Up the Stage and Experimental Frenzy is the reason that they're so good. Like, if you have Experimental Frenzy in play, and this is one of the reasons why I think you definitely have to play Wizard's Lightning if you have the option, is that you can put Light Up the Stage on the stack, hold priority, and look at your top card. If your top card is a Lightning Strike, Shock, or Wizard's Lightning, you get an extra free card. So,
because you can respond to your Light Up the Stage by casting Wizard's Lightning or Shock. That's really smart.
Yeah, so the easiest way to illustrate this is just to say, imagine your top 4 cards are like Shock, Mountain, 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 right? Like, obviously that's a terrible top 4 cards, but it's really easy to illustrate this point. If you don't know this play pattern, then you will turn over Shock and Mountain with your Light Up the Stage and have a Mountain on top of your deck. Probably you'll play the Mountain from on top of your deck, and then you'll get stuck on the 3rd Mountain, right? Instead, if you go Shock, then you'll turn the 2 Mountains over under your Light Up the Stage and have a Mountain on top of your deck. Yes, you will likely strand one of the 2 Mountains that you set aside with Light Up the Stage.
Both of them.
But it doesn't matter. Like,
right, because you're digging deeper. You have Frenzy going.
The Frenzy will make up for that for you. And so...
Instantly.
So that's not a problem.
That's a great play. That is a really smart play.
So, like, these 2 cards are so good together, and people were like, oh, yeah, I'm going to cut Experimental Frenzy because Light Up the Stage is so fast. But, like, these are 2 cards that are like, Experimental Frenzy is great. Light Up the Stage is great. I mean, this card is great. It's Treasure Cruise level. But when they're together...
it's not Treasure Cruise.
I don't know. It's not... they didn't ban it yet, but man...
It's not Treasure Cruise. It's 2/3 of a Treasure Cruise.
It's actually worse than that. I mean, a Treasure Cruise, you just keep all the cards. If you drew reactive cards...
Yeah, but you get this down to 1 mana a little faster than Treasure Cruise. So let's just call a spade for a spade. But this is not Treasure Cruise. It's pretty damn good, but it's not Treasure Cruise.
But that combination of Light Up the Stage and Experimental Frenzy it's great if you haven't done it yet. And so because of that, I think that you should be more likely to be more like Kirby and have the Wizard's Lightnings, I think. I personally chose not to play Skewer the Critics, but to play Fanatical Firebrand, and the reason for that is just Firebrand is a really good catalyst to Light Up the Stage, so I wouldn't want to cut it. It's actually the best catalyst in the deck. It's 1 mana and has haste. And Skewer the Critics is a great...
But you really like Wizard's Lightning better than Skewer the Critics?
I like it because of Frenzy. It's an instant.
That's true.
So, I mean, you can't have them all. I'm not going to play like a 6-card deck.
Yeah, but you don't have to play them all, but you got to play... I don't know. I would play Skewer the Critics. There's no way I'm not playing Skewer the Critics. So, that one, to me, that one is not... That's not in the bottom. That's not in the bottom. That's not in the bottom 10.
So, who are we cutting? I mean, Pyromancer makes Wizard's Lightning good. I'm not cutting Steamkin, right?
Dude, that's what some people do.
That's crazy to me. I think I would sooner cut Chain Whirler, and I don't want to cut him either. So you got to cut somebody.
You do got to cut somebody. This deck is a 66 card deck.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know. Maybe that's right. Maybe I'll try it and reduce the intensity of both my
Dude, you do not want to play less than 4 light up the stages per 60 cards.
Yeah, obviously playing a 66 card deck is going to be worse on my Fanatical Firebrand light up the stage Catalyst combo.
Dude, I think I would
cards to cut.
I think I would agree to play 66 cards if they let me play 5 light up the stage. You know?
Yeah, Skewer the Critics is really good. I'm not sure if it was the correct cut. That's what I did.
Yeah, no. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about just light up the stage. Skewer the Critics is pretty good. Light up the stage is busted.
Yeah, it's really good. These sideboards, they kind of Treasure Map, Risk Factor, Axle Trees and Banefire, Fight with Fire, Lava Coil. I played a different number of them, but pretty much on the same selection of cards versus Kirby, who played Electrostatic Field and Hijack. What do you think of Electrostatic Field and Hijack in a beatdown deck?
Yeah, I mean, well, you need something. I think I don't hate the Hijack. I think whether you play Active Treason or Hijack or whatever, that's fine. You got to play something. I'm a lot more lukewarm on the field.
Yeah, it's just kind of slow, right?
Yeah, and it's not as high impact as I would like.
The problem I found with it was when people sided field in against me when I was playing Mono Red, I would just attack with all my guys, and they would block with their field because that's its job, and then I would just kill it with a shock anyway, and it didn't even do anything. You know, it just like it saved 2 life and drew a shock, which is not as high impact as what you want your sideboard cards to do generally, I think.
So it's not a standard deck, but Brandon Dempsey has got to make you proud over in the modern classic from this past weekend. His burn deck with 4 Goblin Guide, 4 Monastery Swift Spear, 4 Eidolon of the Great Revel. The only splash is black to support literally just 4 Bump in the Night. And then in the sideboard, arguably, I guess, Leyline of the Void and Surgical Extraction. But this deck is Lava Spikes all the way down. 4 Lightning Bolt, 4 Rift Bolt, 4 Skewer the Critic, 4 Lava Spike, 4 Bump in the Night, 4 Searing Blaze, 3 Shard Valley. He's so serious. and 3 Light Up the Stage.
Obviously, this is very...
Is this one Light Up the Stage short of perfection?
Well, it's at least 3 Shard Volleys short of perfection.
You're not a Shard Valley guy, huh?
Well, no, and I think that cutting lands in order to play Shard Volleys makes very little sense.
No, that part's not that bad. So there's a couple things. First, Light Up the Stage fixes your mana.
The full 3 Light Up the Stage?
Second of all, part of the reason that he's playing less land is that he's going to win on turn 3.
Yeah.
He's probably going to win on turn 4.
So I
don't know, man. I would play more than 18 land.
I played 19 land and only 3 Searing Blaze, right? Like, the Searing Blaze is an expensive card in this deck. I think your expectation of getting higher than 2 lands is much lower than it has been traditionally, unless you get kind of the fast 1-drop Light Up the Stage draw. Brandon's obviously just gone with Shard Volleys for a faster Goldfish than playing Grim Lavamancer in his main deck, and he's got 1 Grim Lavamancer in the sideboard. I'm a huge Grim Lavamancer in the main deck fan. I think that obviously it breaks the rule, right? So the red deck creatures are all kind of get your money now creatures. Every single one of them either has haste, or in the case of Eidolon of the Great Revel, has like kind of a pseudo haste ability of if the opponent kills it, it's still got its money. And they are really, really good mana to damage converters, all of them, except for Grim Lavamancer. So you play that guy, he's a terrible mana to damage converter and doesn't get his money when you first play him. But I think it's an okay concession in the modern burn deck because it does so much work against Affinity, against Merfolk, against humans. It really just does a lot of work, and I'm willing to break the rule on that. But Brandon's deck is clearly, this is the pedal to the floor version.
Well, you want pedal to the floor. Dude, there's an even faster deck. Tom Medvec's Goryo's Vengeance deck that he finished 11th with, making use of 4 copies of the new Electrodominance, only instead of being a X-Spell to double with Wilderness Reclamation like in Standard, he's using 4 Electrodominance alongside 3 As Foretold in order to support 4 Living End and 3 Ancestral Visions. And this is also just a Goryo's Vengeance Grizzlebrand deck, and it has Deceiver Exarch Kiki Jiki, because you can Kiki Jiki off of Goryo's Vengeance.
Yeah, this deck is really, I mean, Faithless Looting's got to have a year-end bonus on this deck. Right?
Dude, turn 1, Faithless Looting, discard Kiki Jiki, Deceiver Exarch. Turn 2, Electrodominance, Living End, get back Kiki Jiki, Deceiver Exarch.
Yeah, I love it. Obviously.
Or obviously you could just Goryo's Vengeance Grizzlebrand or whatever, right? Like this deck is woo.
I mean, don't you want the 4th Ancestral Vision? I feel like I really want it.
Well, I don't know. You can only do so much stuff, right? Like Ancestral Vision, don't get me wrong, it's a powerful card, but like how much time do you have to enjoy your Ancestral Recall when you keep winning on the second turn?
I guess this deck can draw a bunch of cards and still be incapable of grinding, right? It just has no grinding cards.
No, this is a deck that is capable of drawing. You can cast a lot of Ancestral Recalls in this deck and draw nothing remotely playable.
Because it's like, all right, tap my Jesus Rin Prodigy. There's another combo piece. Yeah, so you're not going to have any fun. You're right. There's no fun.
This deck has so many combos, though. Goryo's Vengeance the Jace, Goryo's Vengeance Kiki Jiki to keep it to get it going. Goryo's Vengeance Grizzlebrand, As Foretold with Visions and Living End. I mean, this is just all combos, right? Electrodominance.
It can ask you a question.
Yeah, sort of. I guess. I mean, that's I can do that.
Yeah, it axes if Grizzlebrand should be in the graveyard this turn, and the answer is yes. By the way.
Yeah. I see why everybody's just playing Leon of the Voids and Surgical Extractions.
So you could just go let's say if you had 3 mana in play, you could, your opponent is attacking you with some hapless opponent, and you're axe one of their guys, dump Grizzlebrand, and then cast Electrodominance for 0, Living End the Grizzlebrand into play, right? That's exciting.
Definitely.
It's not going to get a block. That's not actually going to happen. But it would still be exciting. You could draw a lot of cards there.
Yep. So, good to see the Ravnica Allegiance already having an impact in Modern. But Modern's a pretty dope set, or a dope format, so that's kind of to be expected.
Just one note about that deck, actually, I just noticed it. It's a Blood Moon deck also, right? So you can...
Why not?
You could just Blood Moon them, and then you could cast your Electrodominance and your Faithless Looting and your Lightning X. It's fine. You could hard cast Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker. That's a thing you could do. Love it.
Oh, actually, there is one more deck that I think be kind of fun to call out. Lyle Rolf's third place Legacy deck from the Legacy Classic this past weekend. He's playing Dimir Delver. So you're like, okay, Dimir Delver. What all are you splashing black for? And you're like, well, okay, Gurmag Angler, and that totally makes sense, right? Fatal Push, of course. Why wouldn't you play Fatal Push? Baleful Strix, you're like, okay, sure. I mean, it's Legacy. I guess people just play Baleful Strix in decks, right? Thoughtseize, yeah, that makes sense, totally, of course. Unmask is kind of a weird Thoughtseize variant, but I guess, okay.
It's free.
Stitcher's Supplier. You just have 4 copies of Stitcher's Supplier?
Didn't see that one coming.
Okay, I guess you got to get your Gurmag Angler down faster.
That's Dark Ritual for Gurmag Angler.
And then your 4 copies of Yuriko the Tiger Shadow, which is somehow a real Magic card. This is 1 blue-black from one of the Commander products. It's 1 blue-black, 1/3, Commander Ninjutsu.
Love
blue
it.
black.
I love that keyword. I don't know what it is. I love it.
You can pay blue and a black and return an unblocked attacker you control to your hand to put this card onto the battlefield from your hand or the command zone tapped and attacking. So the command zone portion probably not coming up that much in the Legacy Classic, but it still has ninjutsu, which lets you bounce the Baleful Strix or the Stitcher's Supplier back to your hand, so that on turn 1 you play whatever, whether it's Delver of Secrets or Stitcher's Supplier. Turn 2 you're like, boom, surprise, it's a ninjutsu Yuriko the Tiger Shadow, and then you're like, wait, what does this do when you ninjutsu it down? So it's a 1/3 legendary human ninja, and whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, such as Yuriko, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost. Oh, wow. So like, let's say on turn 2 you played Baleful Strix. On turn 3, when you attack with the Strix, you bounce the Strix back to your hand. So you're going to get to draw a card from the Strix when you replay it. You get Yuriko in play, which when it hits them, lets you draw another card. But like, you can, if your opponent's, if you want to get them good, you can actually use your third mana to brainstorm and put Gurmag Angler back on top of your deck, so that your opponent just loses 7 right there.
How about Consign to Oblivion?
Oh, yeah. Consign to Oblivion's another nice one, right? I mean,
7. I mean, in the free spells, Unmask is 4, Force of Will is 5. I mean, like, this is awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so this, I think, is quietly just the deck of the weekend. This is just some dope technology.
This is actively fantastic. I love it. I feel like I might have been converted. Yuriko the Tiger Shadow. This thing is dumb. It does so much damage.
Oh yeah, and it draws you cards.
That is the two things I like. Like, what else do you want? So this
a 2-for-1.
What? This is more than a 2-for-1, Patrick. It's like you get the 2-for-1 from drawing the card, right? You get another 2-for-1 for flipping the Baleful Strix back to your hand. But you also like making people discard. You like countering target spell. It does it all.
Oh yeah,
love it.
Oh yeah, so this deck is definitely dope.
I love it. This is crazy cool.
All right, man. Looking forward to seeing the next step in the evolution, and I'm kind of getting excited. Just a couple more weeks to the Pro Tour.
In life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge for jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis days. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with